Let me tell you something that changed my life. Years ago, when I turned 70, I faced a harsh reality. My energy was low, my joints ached, and every morning felt like a battle just to get out of bed. My doctor warned me about my rising blood sugar levels and told me that if I didn't make a change soon, my health would only get worse. I had always loved my sweet treats, cookies with my coffee, a slice of cake at family gatherings, and even that late-night bowl of ice cream. But deep down, I knew sugar was taking a toll on me. So I decided to do something drastic. I gave up sugar altogether. At first, it wasn't easy. My body craved it like nothing else. Every time I passed by a bakery or saw someone enjoying a piece of chocolate, I felt tempted. But I kept reminding myself why I started. The first week was the toughest. I felt tired, irritable, and restless. It was like my body was throwing a tantrum, begging for that sweet fix it had grown so used to. But something surprising happened after about 10 days. I started waking up with more energy. My mornings no longer felt sluggish. Instead, I felt alert and ready to take on the day. It was as if a fog had lifted from my mind. One of the first things I noticed was how my taste buds began to change. Foods I once thought were bland now had flavor. Fruits tasted sweeter than ever before. I remember biting into an apple one afternoon and being shocked at how naturally sweet and satisfying it felt. It was like my body was finally learning to appreciate real food instead of artificial sweetness. My cravings for sugary snacks started to fade, and I found myself enjoying simple meals without feeling deprived. Another thing that amazed me was how much my joints improved. Before giving up sugar, I struggled with stiffness in my knees and fingers. Some days, I could barely make a fist without discomfort. But after about a month, I realized I was moving more freely. My morning walks became longer and more enjoyable. I wasn't wincing with every step anymore. It felt like my body had been weighed down by inflammation for years, and now it was finally letting go. Sleep was another big change. For years, I struggled with restless nights, tossing and turning, waking up every few hours. But as I continued avoiding sugar, my sleep became deeper and more restful. I started waking up feeling refreshed instead of groggy. My mind felt sharper too. I could remember details better, focus on conversations longer, and even recall names that used to slip my mind. It felt like my brain had been given a fresh start. One thing I wasn't expecting was the emotional change. I had always thought my mood swings were just part of getting older. But without sugar constantly spiking and crashing my blood sugar levels, I felt more balanced. I didn't get those sudden bursts of energy followed by a hard crash. Instead, I felt calm and steady throughout the day. I wasn't as easily irritated or overwhelmed. It was like my mind finally found some peace. My weight began to change too. I wasn't dieting, counting calories, or doing anything extreme. But slowly, the pounds I had been carrying for years began to melt away. My clothes fit better. My face looked less puffy. I started feeling lighter and more confident in my body. It wasn't about vanity. It was about feeling strong and capable again. But the most powerful change was in my heart. Not just emotionally, I mean my actual heart health. My doctor couldn't believe the difference in my blood pressure and cholesterol levels. The risk factors that once worried him had improved dramatically. He told me I had given my heart a new lease on life. And believe me, when you're in your 70s, you don't take that for granted. I won't pretend it was all easy. There were days I missed my old habits. Family gatherings sometimes tested my willpower. But every time I reminded myself of how much better I felt, it became easier to say no. I found new ways to enjoy life's little pleasures without relying on sugar. A warm cup of tea in the evening, fresh fruit on a hot afternoon, sharing a heartfelt conversation with my loved ones. These moments became sweeter than any dessert ever could. I know it's easy to think that change isn't worth it when you've already lived so many years. But I can tell you this, giving up sugar gave me a second chance. It's never too late to feel stronger, sharper, and more alive. My body stopped aching. My mind stopped racing. And my heart? Well, I like to think it started beating a little stronger once I let go of the very thing that was holding me back. If you're wondering if you should give it a try, I can only say this. Imagine waking up feeling rested. Imagine walking without pain. Imagine finding joy in the simplest moments because your mind is calm and your heart is full. That's what happened to me, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Now, let's clear some common questions. How does social life change when you're surrounded by family and friends who still enjoy sugary treats? When I decided to give up sugar after turning 70, I knew it wasn't just about changing what I ate. I realized it would affect my social life too. Looking back, I underestimated how deeply sugar was tied to moments with family and friends. At first, I worried that stepping away from sugary treats might make me feel isolated or out of place. After all, gatherings often revolve around food, and desserts seem to hold a special place at every table. But what surprised me most was how my relationships and social experiences actually changed. Not in the way I expected, but in ways that taught me valuable lessons about connection, comfort, and even courage. The first few weeks were challenging. I remember visiting my daughter's house for dinner one evening. As usual, she had baked her famous chocolate cake, rich, moist, and topped with thick frosting. That cake had been a staple at our family dinners for years. Everyone loved it, myself included. As the plates were passed around, I felt a tightness in my chest. Saying no to that cake felt like I was rejecting more than just dessert. It felt like I was stepping away from tradition I had been part of for decades. My daughter noticed I wasn't reaching for a slice and asked if I was feeling okay. I explained that I was trying to avoid sugar, and while she was supportive, I could sense her surprise. The others carried on, enjoying their cake as usual, but I couldn't help but feel like I was on the outside looking in. Moments like that were difficult, but they taught me something important. At first, I assumed people would judge me or think I was being difficult. But more often than not, they were simply curious. When I explained why I had made this change, people didn't criticize me. They asked questions. Some wanted to know if I missed sugar. Others wondered how I managed to resist the temptation. Those conversations helped me realize that my decision didn't have to create distance. In fact, it often opened the door to deeper connections. The hardest moments were celebrations. Birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings seemed to revolve around sugary treats. Saying no to a slice of birthday cake or skipping the tray of cookies during Christmas wasn't always easy. There were times I felt like I was missing out, and I'd be lying if I said I never felt tempted. But what kept me strong was reminding myself why I had started this journey in the first place. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to live longer. I wanted to enjoy these moments with my family without feeling drained, sluggish, or sick afterward. Over time, something interesting happened. People began to notice the changes in me. My energy improved, my skin looked better, and my moods felt steadier. Friends started asking what I was doing differently, and some even began cutting back on sugar themselves. My decision, which I once feared would isolate me, actually inspired others to think more carefully about their own choices. I found that people respected my decision more than I had expected. Of course, not everyone understood. There were moments when someone would say, "Oh, one cookie won't hurt," or "Come on, it's just a little sugar." I learned to smile and politely decline. The truth is, once I experienced the benefits of giving up sugar, I didn't want to go back. It wasn't just about willpower, it was about feeling better, and I wasn't willing to trade that away just to fit in. One of the biggest surprises was discovering how much joy I could still find in food without relying on sugar. I started experimenting with new recipes, learning how to prepare meals that were flavorful, satisfying, and free from added sugars. I found new ways to enjoy special moments without feeling deprived. Fresh fruit became my go-to treat, and I was amazed at how naturally sweet it tasted once my body stopped craving artificial sweetness. I remember one afternoon when my granddaughter handed me a bowl of sliced strawberries. I hadn't eaten strawberries in months, and when I took a bite, I was stunned by how sweet and delicious they were. That moment reminded me that food doesn't have to be loaded with sugar to feel indulgent. Over time, my family adapted. My daughter started making desserts that weren't loaded with sugar, so I could still enjoy something special during gatherings. My friends stopped pushing me to just have one bite, and instead, they began offering healthier options at our get-togethers. It wasn't something I asked for. It was something that naturally happened once they saw how committed I was to feeling better. In a strange way, giving up sugar made my relationship stronger. It showed me that the people who truly cared about me didn't just want me to join in on dessert. They wanted me to be happy and healthy. There were moments when I felt tested. I remember one evening at a friend's birthday party when a tray of warm pastries was passed around the table. The smell was incredible, and for a moment, I felt that familiar craving creeping back in. But then I thought about how much better I had been feeling, the clearer mind, the stronger body, the peaceful nights of sleep. That memory was stronger than the temptation, and I felt proud of myself for staying true to my decision. Looking back, I can honestly say that giving up sugar didn't ruin my social life. It reshaped it. I learned that food isn't the only way to connect with others. Real connection comes from conversation, shared memories, and meaningful moments. I discovered that I didn't need to say yes to dessert to feel included. The people who mattered most understood that my decision wasn't about rejecting their kindness. It was about caring for my own well-being. What unexpected benefits might you experience after several months without sugar at an older age? One of the first things I noticed was how much clearer my mind became. I never realized how foggy I had felt until that fog began to lift. For years, I had blamed my forgetfulness on getting older. I would walk into a room and forget why I was there. I would misplace my keys or struggle to recall a name that I knew was right on the tip of my tongue. I just assumed that was part of aging. But after a few months without sugar, something shifted. My thoughts felt sharper, and I could focus on conversations without my mind drifting away. I could sit down to read a book and actually remember what I had just read. It felt like my brain had woken up after being half asleep for years. Another surprise was how much better I started sleeping. For a long time, my nights had been restless. I would toss and turn, waking up every few hours and feeling exhausted by morning. I thought that was just part of getting older too. But after cutting out sugar, my sleep improved in ways I hadn't expected. I started falling asleep faster, and once I was out, I stayed asleep. The kind of deep, peaceful rest I hadn't felt in years became my new normal. I would wake up feeling refreshed, and for the first time in a long time, mornings didn't feel like a struggle. My joints also began to feel different. For years, my knees would ache when I climbed stairs. My fingers felt stiff whenever I tried to open a jar. I thought it was just arthritis creeping in. But as the months passed, I realized the pain was easing. The stiffness in my fingers faded, and my knees didn't complain quite so much when I moved around. I didn't expect that, and when I told my doctor about it, he explained that cutting out sugar may have reduced inflammation in my body. Whatever the reason, I was grateful to feel more comfortable in my own skin again. One of the most unexpected changes was in my mood. I had always considered myself a fairly calm person, but looking back, I now see that I'd spent a lot of time feeling irritable and on edge. I used to snap at little things, spilled coffee, misplaced glasses, or a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. After quitting sugar, I found myself feeling steadier. I had more patience, and things that used to bother me didn't seem to hold as much weight. It was like my emotions had settled down, and I could handle life's little frustrations without feeling overwhelmed. Another surprise was how much stronger my immune system became. I used to catch colds every winter like clockwork. If someone in the family came down with the flu, I knew I was next. But after several months without sugar, I noticed something strange. I wasn't getting sick as often. Even when people around me were sneezing and coughing, I seemed to stay healthy. I can't say for certain why that happened, but I believe my body had become stronger from the inside out. Perhaps the most surprising change was how much my taste buds came back to life. When I first quit sugar, I worried that I'd miss the sweetness I had once enjoyed. But after a while, something remarkable happened. Foods that I had never considered sweet suddenly tasted rich and flavorful. A handful of blueberries felt like dessert. A slice of fresh orange seemed almost too sweet to finish. Even vegetables like carrots and bell peppers seemed to have a natural sweetness I had never fully appreciated before. It was as if my taste buds had been reset, and I could finally enjoy flavors that I had once overlooked. What surprised me most of all was how this journey changed the way I approached food and social gatherings. I once thought giving up sugar would make me feel like an outsider. I imagined sitting at birthday parties with an empty plate, feeling left out. But instead, I found that my relationships deepened. People were curious about why I had made this change, and those conversations often turned into meaningful moments of connection. Some friends even started joining me in cutting back on sugar, and we found new ways to enjoy meals together without relying on sweets. Emotionally, I felt stronger too. There's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from making a decision and sticking with it. Each time I said no to a cookie or passed on dessert, I reminded myself that I was choosing my health, my energy, and my future. Over time, that choice became easier. It wasn't about willpower anymore. It was about knowing that I deserved to feel good and that my well-being was worth protecting. Looking back, I can say without hesitation that quitting sugar brought me gifts I never expected. My mind is clearer, my body is stronger, my moods are calmer, and my relationships are richer. I used to believe that certain struggles were just part of growing older: forgetfulness, poor sleep, aching joints, and constant fatigue. But now I know that many of those things weren't just part of aging. They were symptoms of a body weighed down by too much sugar. Is it ever too late to start reducing sugar? And how soon can someone in their 70s expect to see meaningful results? If there's one thing I've learned in my years, it's that it's never too late to make a change that improves your life. When I decided to cut back on sugar in my 70s, I wasn't sure what to expect. I had spent a lifetime building habits: morning coffee sweetened with 2 spoons of sugar, biscuits with my afternoon tea, and desserts that had become a comfort after dinner. Part of me wondered if there was any point in changing now. Could I really undo decades of habits? Would my body even respond at my age? The answer turned out to be far more encouraging than I could have imagined. At first, I braced myself for a long and difficult road. But to my surprise, some changes came quickly. Within just a few days, I started noticing small but meaningful improvements. My energy, which had been sluggish for so long, seemed to pick up. Mornings felt a little less groggy, and I wasn't dragging my feet by mid-afternoon like I had before. That unexpected burst of energy gave me hope, and it reminded me that my body was still capable of healing, no matter my age. After about 2 weeks, I realized something else. My cravings were starting to fade. I had always believed that I just had a sweet tooth, something I was stuck with for life. But cutting back on sugar made me realize that those cravings weren't really about desire. They were more like a cycle my body had fallen into. For years, I had been trapped in a pattern of sugar highs followed by energy crashes. Each time my energy dipped, I reached for something sweet to perk me back up, and the cycle kept repeating. Breaking free from that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Once my body adjusted, I found myself no longer reaching for sugary snacks out of habit. By the time I reached the 1-month mark, things started to get even better. My sleep, which had been restless for years, became deeper and more refreshing. I would fall asleep faster, and once I was out, I stayed asleep. For the first time in ages, I woke up feeling truly rested. That alone felt like a miracle. I had always assumed my poor sleep was just part of getting older, but now I see that sugar had been playing a bigger role than I realized. Another unexpected change happened with my joints. For years, my knees would ache whenever I climbed stairs. My fingers felt stiff in the mornings, and I would wince each time I reached for a jar to twist open. But after 2 or 3 months without sugar, I noticed that my joints didn't bother me nearly as much. The pain wasn't gone entirely, but it had eased to the point where I could move more freely. My doctor later explained that cutting back on sugar may have reduced inflammation in my body, and that made perfect sense to me. Emotionally, I started to feel different too. I had always been someone who tried to stay calm, but I realized that I had spent a lot of time feeling irritable without really noticing it. After a couple of months without sugar, I felt steadier. I didn't get worked up as easily, and little frustrations didn't seem to weigh on me like they once did. It was as if my emotions had settled, and that calmness made life feel a little lighter. One of the most encouraging changes came when I realized my mind was clearer. I had grown used to feeling forgetful, losing my train of thought mid-sentence, walking into rooms only to forget why I was there, and struggling to remember names that I knew I should know. But after about 3 months without sugar, those moments became less frequent. My thoughts felt sharper, and I could focus on conversations without my mind wandering off. It felt as though I had turned back the clock on my memory, and that gave me a new sense of confidence. Perhaps one of the most meaningful changes was how much stronger my immune system became. For years, I seemed to catch every cold that passed through the family. But after cutting out sugar, I noticed that I wasn't getting sick as often. Even when I was around people coughing and sneezing, I managed to stay healthy. That wasn't something I expected, but it made me realize how powerful these changes could be. I also discovered that my taste buds began to change. Foods that once seemed bland started to taste surprisingly rich and flavorful. A handful of berries felt like dessert. A simple slice of apple tasted sweeter than I ever remembered. Even plain yogurt, which I once avoided because it seemed too sour, suddenly tasted creamy and satisfying. It was as if my taste buds had woken up, and I could enjoy the natural sweetness in foods that I had overlooked for years. Socially, things changed as well. At first, I worried that giving up sugar would make me feel left out of gatherings. I imagined sitting quietly while everyone else enjoyed cake or pastries. But instead, I found that people were curious about what I was doing. Friends started asking questions, and some even told me they admired my decision. In time, a few of them joined me, and we discovered new ways to enjoy meals together without relying on sugary desserts. The most surprising thing I realized was how empowering this change became. When I first started cutting back on sugar, I thought I was just making a small change to improve my health. But it turned out to be more than that. Each time I turned down a sugary treat, I felt like I was choosing myself, my health, my well-being, and my future. Over time, that choice became easier. It wasn't about discipline anymore. It was about feeling better, stronger, and more in control of my life. If you're wondering whether it's too late to start, I can tell you from experience that it's never too late. Your body is far more capable of healing than you might believe. Even in your 70s, your body is still willing to work with you if you're willing to give it a chance. The changes may not happen overnight, but they will happen. Within days, you may feel a little more energized. Within weeks, you might notice your sleep improving. Within months, you could feel like a stronger, sharper, and more vibrant version of yourself. The truth is, change isn't about how old you are. It's about believing that you deserve to feel good and knowing that your body still has the ability to surprise you. It's never too late to start, and the sooner you do, the sooner you'll discover just how much better life can feel.